podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Sports fans, come experience the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel for all your sports betting action. The ultimate place for any sports enthusiast. Take advantage of our 24/7 kiosks, massive video screens, and watch all the action from the best seat in the house. Make every moment more at the all-new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
Welcome back to what used to be called Manic Monday. Now it's just Middle Monday, but this is still called the Love Tennis Podcast for now at least. My name's James Gray from iNewspaper and inews.co.uk. Every week I get together with George Belshaw and Calvin Betton, and sometimes we talk about tennis. Naturally, this week we've got loads of tennis to talk about. One of the refreshing things about these podcasts over the last, fortnight or so has actually been the most of the time we've been able to talk about tennis. As we speak, we're literally watching some tennis because we're watching the very end of Marin Cilic up against Daniil Medvedev. No spoilers quite yet. If you haven't watched it yet, go and watch it now, I guess. And then we'll talk about it in about a minute and a half. Because it's been a pretty dramatic day at Roland Garros, which is not something we've necessarily been able to say in the men's draw. This morning we did some research as a sort of group of journalists and found that this could have been the first time since 1960 that the top 8 seeds in a Grand Slam had formed the 8 quarterfinalists. 1960 Wimbledon, I don't need to tell you, Calvin. Rod Laver got to the final and lost to Neil Fraser, obviously. It would have been the case, except for Holger Rune and Marin Cilic, it appears. More on that later. Let's start with Holger Rune versus Stefanos Tsitsipas. It was a 4-set match. It did not go the way we thought it would, to say the least. It was tight after an hour and 40 minutes, 1 set all, and to be honest, Rune ran away with it, George, didn't he?
So speak for yourself about it not going how you thought it would, James. I've been calling Rune's first of his 14th French Opens the whole way through this tournament.
Well, in fairness, I did write my preview for yesterday, and this was upset watch. This was the one I said would be the upset, but it was quite narrow field, so I'm not going to take too much credit for it.
I mean, Tsitsipas hasn't really got going this tournament. I mean, to his credit, in some of the matches where it's looked like he's playing really badly, he suddenly found really good tennis and kind of dug it out. But there has been a lot of kind of poor moments, and you kind of felt he needed to get his act together pretty swiftly for guys like Rune and Rude, who really like the clay. And, I thought Rune was brilliant, to be fair. He really looked like he belonged to. There was maybe a few little wobbles right at the end. I think it was 5-1 up in the final set. And
he got so... I mean, in fairness, he's 19. He's never even played a main draw at Roland Garros before, which I didn't quite appreciate. And, yeah, he got tight. He was serving for the match. He got tight. He got broken to love. Unfortunately, he had the double break, so he got over the line. But I think that's forgivable.
Yeah, definitely. And, he still got over the line. I think that if he'd faltered one more time, that loss... and gone on to lose, that loss would have haunted him forever. But yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? After Tsitsipas kind of talking a little bit about equipment causing him problems and kind of making out, I'm not sure if it was a racket or string thing. Maybe Calvin can try and guess and shed a bit more light. Or if James, you put your hand up, you might know.
Well, it's just because it came up in press and it was quite sort of notable. Tsitsipas's press, I mean, I came down as soon as Holger Rune finished his on-court speech, and the press seats to the press room in Chatrier is a 4-story lift, but it's not a long walk. And I walked past the small press conference room, and I said, "Is that Tsitsipas?" And he was already in there and already going, and it was a nightmare because we were all queuing at the door trying to hear what he was saying. Eventually, they stopped the press conference and let everyone come in and file in. He clearly didn't. I mean, he was, as you can expect, straight after a match like that, pretty downtrodden. Every answer was preceded by a sort of lengthy pause, and then he would, in fairness, he would then talk quite a lot. He did discuss this kind of equipment problem, which he'd been having. He said, physically I feel fine. Waking up couldn't be better. I was struggling a lot in terms of finding rhythm. I was very nervous on the court, very frustrated, but I couldn't stop being like this, especially when you feel like there have been a few changes in terms of equipment, but I wouldn't attribute that to equipment. And then he hinted at it again. He said, you have to do this in the back of your head, not to worry about those problems, having kind of changed a little bit of the equipment. And then Matt from the Tennis Podcast, all three of whom are here this week and have been a tremendous addition. Matt from the Tennis Podcast said, and it was the last question, he said, I was just wondering if you could clarify the equipment change you're talking about. Is that the racket or the strings? And Stefanos was the only question he answered quite quickly. He said, I'd prefer not to talk about it, please. I don't want to answer that, thank you. Now, Calvin, my speculative idea, and not knowing a huge amount about this, but knowing what you've said in the past about rackets, is that Stefanos is potentially working with a new racket that he's got sort of spray painted or taped up, or it's still got his old sponsor's name on it, and he doesn't want to talk about it because he would catch himself in a lie. Can't hear you there, Calvin. Probably a great idea.
I've not heard anything that he's changing rackets, but then I don't know, is there that rumor around the tournament?
I mean, we really haven't heard much about it until now, but I mean, presumably if he has changed rackets or got something new, or surely that's the only reason he wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, he's with Wilson, and historically Wilson don't. If a player is with Wilson, they tend to stick with Wilson.
Right.
There's not. I think Djokovic, certainly of the high-profile players, Djokovic is the only one who I can think of who has left Wilson and gone to another company. And when he did that, he wasn't number one in the world when he did it.
Is that because it's quite lucrative being with Wilson? Is it just because people get very comfortable? It's quite a different type of racket. What's the kind of...
Without wishing to be a Wilson advert here,
We are available for sponsorship if you're listening, Wilson.
The Wilson blade is generally considered to be the best racket amongst the most well-rounded, best racket if you've got enough power and if you've got a good feel. Basically, if you're a good tennis player, the Wilson blade is generally considered to be the best racket. But there are others that, and as I've said before, that nobody plays with the rackets that you buy off the shelf now. So you can make any racket to play like a Wilson blade or whatever Tsitsipas's version of the blade is that he's currently playing with. But and I would say they pay well. I'd say that they don't pay loads of players, but I think when they have them, look, they've had Roger Federer for 20 years. I don't imagine he's playing with the rackets for peanuts. And I think if they pay well and it's the racket that is generally considered to be the best racket and you're used to it, I don't really get why you'd change. And I don't really understand why Tsitsipas would change either, because it's probably the ideal racket for his type of player. And if he wants a change, then he could just customize it to be what it wants to be. The only reason he would change is for financial reasons.
Are there any other options that we think it could be, kind of speculatively? I mean, he's kind of said this will be for the best for me in the long run. Could that just be a simple, like, big addition of weight, perhaps, or different string tension, anything like that? Or I guess he'd probably mix his tensions per match, though, Calvin.
Players tend not to mix tensions per match. They'll have a set tension, and they'll have a couple of other rackets in the bag that some are a bit tighter, some are a bit looser. But they won't really change tension unless things are going terribly.
It's interesting, really, because I've just not often heard a player. Maybe it's because a player wouldn't, if they were going through a mid-season change, they wouldn't ever even bother to alluding to it, so he wouldn't ask about it. But it does seem a little odd.
I've never known a player change mid-season.
That seems crazy.
Because apart from anything else, the contracts would run to the end of the years.
Yeah.
So
well, I wonder if that's why we're not talking about it.
Can it be shoes, shorts, t-shirt? What other equipment is there? Headband?
I think
grips,
shoes.
rings.
Shoes is hard to change, isn't it? Because you can tell because trainers are such a obvious design. I reckon that would be kind of obvious. Although, funny enough, she didn't change brand, but Iga Swiatek did change her shoes today. Just before the first set tiebreak, which I thought was weird. And then she changed her racket 2 points into the tiebreak. And I was like, is she just playing silly buggers here and trying to get in Zheng Qinwen's head? Anyway, we'll come on to that a little bit later. As you say, George, it's not exactly been plain sailing through this tournament with Stefanos Tsitsipas, for whom we thought the draw had opened up. He was in the bottom half, where we had no Alcaraz, no Federer, no Federer, I suppose, no Nadal, no Djokovic, no Zverev. As it is, he's blown it. He dropped us 2 sets to Mazzetti, he dropped a set to Zdenek Kolar, and now he's out in the 4th round. Is it such a bad loss, or do we just think Holger Rune is slightly out of place in the rankings?
I think this is a bad loss. I think it's a bad tournament for Tsitsipas, and it's kind of reframing the way I'm looking at his year in some ways. Like I kind of thought, he had that surgery at the end of the season, so Australia was always going to be a little bit of a write-off, but he still did okay out there, and then he kind of has kept going, reached a few finals, done pretty well on the clay. Lost to Djokovic in Rome, didn't he? Just before the tournament. So it kind of felt to me like he kind of done as well with this season, given the issues he had coming into it, as he probably could have hoped to do. And it felt like he was going to almost peak for this tournament and then getting the good draw on the other half. I'm a bit miffed by how he's played, to be honest, because it wasn't just this match. It wasn't just a bad day at the office. It's been a bad week. He's played really poorly, and he's a really good player. And we credited him earlier in the tournament in the first 5 sets with Mazzetti, for example, where he was awful. He was awful for 2 sets, but when it mattered, he turned up and got it done. And sometimes when the best players do that, you then expect a couple of statement performances, and they start turning it around and they think, yeah, I've shown I can win on a bad day. But the bad days have just kept coming, and that kind of speaks to a wider problem, which I suppose is where there's equipment things coming in from him, whether that is the issue or not. But yeah, I'm disappointed from his perspective, to be honest.
I do think that the best players in this era start fast, and I was just kind of minded of it today, because especially later in the tournament, like in the first or second round you can kind of forgive it, but Djokovic on whenever it was Sunday won the first set 6-1, and it just like Schwartzman was right behind the 8 ball straight away, and he had opportunities, but Djokovic won it. And Alcaraz against Khachanov, first 5 games Alcaraz played against Khachanov the other night was some of the best tennis I've seen him play, some of the best tennis I've seen anyone play, frankly. And Khachanov is not a mug. Khachanov's a big hitter. He's better than 21 in the world on clay as well. He's a real problem.
And it like sets the tone. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I turned off after the first 4 games of Alcaraz. I'd been sat watching Nadal, Auger-Aliassime for the previous 4.5 hours. So I was like, really risking annoying my girlfriend by watching another kind of long match. And I watched the first 4 games, like, this is over. There's no way this guy loses it. The best players, if they start like that, it's so rare for them to be flipped over. If he's playing a Djokovic and Nadal, maybe that could turn into a match. But, he just sets the tone. And you're right. I mean, Tsitsipas hasn't started a match well at all, really, this week. And it doesn't help you.
No, and it kind of plays into something that we've kind of been mentioning on a couple of occasions over the last few weeks and months. And it is increasingly becoming the case that Stefanos Tsitsipas's career is starting to get overtaken a bit. And again, someone kind of directly asked him this. They said, you've lost to Rune this year. You've lost to, I think he's lost to Alcaraz as well. Obviously, both teenagers. You're used to being the young kind of, disruptor, the pretender. What's it like to have them kind of come past you a little bit? And he I think he felt it was a kind of an affront on his hunger. I mean, he wasn't prickly about it, but from his answer, he said, it has to come at some point. It came for everyone. I'm not worried. I know my tennis. I know my game. These kids are going to want to beat me badly because they're chasing, but I'm chasing too. And I'm in a different position than they are. I'm still hungry to beat them too. Now that they have beat me, I want payback. And in fairness, the first half of his press conference was mostly about how much he didn't like Holger Rune and how much he was definitely going to beat him next time, which made me laugh as well.
That's not a bad thing, though. I mean, you should be angry at losses like that. You should, kind of have the fight stoked into you. But, this happens in tennis, doesn't it? I mean, it's been the same with Tsitsipas and Rude. They kind of overtook people like Nishikori or whatever in that kind of era where they were called like the Dimitrov, lost generation, yeah. Dimitrov.
Even Team, you could argue, because he's a bit older than them.
Team. I mean, Team obviously eventually got over the line, but this is kind of the way it works. So there's no reason Tsitsipas couldn't go on and win a slam. But you look at his numbers now. We've said this with him and Zverev a lot the last kind of couple of months. Gone from thinking these guys are going to win 3 to 6 slams to probably, if they get to 3, you're going to do really well. And there are problems in Tsitsipas' game that don't match up well against people like Alcaraz, and I'm getting increasingly worried for him. He's not going to get over the line, to be honest.
It's quite strange how we talk about eras, isn't it? Because I think there's 5 years between Rune and Tsitsipas, which is the same age gap as there is between Federer and Nadal. And
Federer fans always argue that, Calvin. They always say Federer's from a different generation to this guy. They call his generation Roddick. It is hard to kind of draw lines.
I mean, I'm not sure you can say generation, because generations are not 5 years, are they? Like, it's like, but I mean, I agree with George though. Like, I think Tsitsipas will still win at least one, purely because I think there'll be a slam somewhere where maybe one of the favourites, the players who cause him trouble, should I say, get knocked out. And there's one, you always have one of those slams every couple of years where one of the top 10 plays, sort of one of the top 4 or 5 plays somebody who's ranked about 12, and it's just too much in the final. And I think that I don't think Tsitsipas will win as many as what we initially thought, but I'd still be surprised. I think there's a chance that Zverev doesn't win a slam. I think there's a chance that
with his bottle problem,
yeah. I mean, I think there's also a chance that Felix doesn't win one.
We've got Holger Rune winning 14 French Opens, Alcaraz winning.
George,
44.
we're not getting back into what I think we might have to call Holger maths, where we try and work out who's going to win the next 55 slams. On Holger, sorry, Calvin.
I was just going to say that what I'd be concerned about with Tsitsipas today is that he's lost the play. Like George said, there are certain elements of his game, and we all know what that is, backhand, that don't hold up against players like Alcaraz, who can just blow it away and cause him trouble. Like, Holger Rune's not one of those type of players.
No,
like he has his strengths, but he's not going to blow you away. He shouldn't be able to overpower Tsitsipas on the backhand side, and it's now getting to the stage where like it is becoming like a bit of a weakness.
And it wasn't today. So, well, I mean, this is naive, and I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of how the backhand breaks down. But it didn't feel to me like the Tsitsipas backhand broke down today. It was more that Rune was so quick when he saw the opportunity to step in and hit the backhand down the line. You know, if they were trading backhand to backhand. It was amazing, actually. At one point, I was just watching Rune. I sometimes just watch one guy and just watch all of their movements in a point. And I was watching him and they were trading. And then it was like a switch just flicked. It wasn't, when you see Rafa do it, he sort of quite methodically steps in and muscles it down the line. It was like he went from being ready to trade back cross court to like snap, going down the line, bang. And he hit it so cleanly all day. That backhand down the line. It must have been so frustrating. I also think that he got in Tsitsipas' head in quite a big way. Something that Stefanos said afterwards that really made me laugh, and I had to work quite hard not to like actively laugh out loud because it wasn't really that kind of press conference, was when he was talking about how Rune's a very emotional guy on the court. He plays with a lot of emotion. He says he's a one-of-a-kind opponent, a very emotional opponent, always seems like something's bothering him when he plays, which I think is a really good, like, a good quality for someone to have. Like, if you were going to describe someone's playing style, you'd just be like, seems like something's always bothering him. And I think the best players have that.
I mean, that's quite the goal from Tsitsipas to say that. It's some of the, like, I mean, the guy, like, he breathes like he's a redneck from America, like, with his like, full-on mouth breathing when he's waiting to return. And he has all these weird tics and like the way that he walks and everything. He's always taking his toilet breaks. I'd keep my mouth shut if I was him about how other people look when they play.
I think Holger Rune's going to give us a lot of entertainment over the years. How good he's going to be on other surfaces, I don't know.
I find, just going back to Tsitsipas there, we've covered this before, but I find it baffling, right, that when somebody looks like him, they're generally like, they're pretty cool, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like, he looks like he should be like a pretty cool bloke. And he's just not, is he? He's just like a dweeb.
I think there is a certain sect of society who find him a very interesting guy. I mean, his Twitter is one, as we often say, his Twitter is one of the worst things about the internet. His Instagram is marginally better because I don't think he really manages it, although his stories are pretty cringeworthy. He's not someone I'd want to go for a beer with, probably because he'd insist on ordering a matcha latte and make sure that I had one as well. which I think is an important quality in a tennis player. I think there needs to be, but if he's going to appeal to a different group of people, i.e., not me, then so be it. That's fine, George.
If he is to win a slam, which is the one we think he will win now?
It's this one, isn't
the
it?
Aussie.
Oh, interesting.
The Aussie, probably.
Why do you think the Aussie?
I don't know. No, listen, right. His game is pretty complete. Apart from his backhand, that's crap. Apart from the massive hole that makes it incomplete, his game is pretty complete. There's no reason why. No, there's no reason why he couldn't win any of them. I don't think so. I'd say he's equal chance of winning any of them. To be honest,
I think the Aussie, and I'm just trying to check this, but I think the Aussie he might have the highest win percentage of them all. In fact, he does. Yeah, he's got 77% win percentage at the Aussie, 75 here, 56 at the US.
He's also beaten Federer and Nadal at the Aussie as well.
One big Greek contingency out there as well, which does help.
Big Greek diaspora, especially in Melbourne. The thing that he talked about today was the grass, and he said, "I'm going to play as many grass tournaments as possible before Wimbledon. I made a mistake last year. I didn't play enough before Wimbledon. I came straight from here to Wimbledon, and that was my first match on grass. Not the best thing to do." And he said, "I had a good junior career on grass, and there's no reason why I can't be good on grass. I know I haven't got the senior results, and I know it's not the same, but." And I've always said I thought he looked like someone who could be good on grass, and I don't really have much justification for that.
The grass is really interesting because I've also agreed. I agree with you, James. I've had the same kind of feeling for a long time, and it was his mindset to it that in many ways kind of convinced me he was going to be good on the grass. I remember him as like an 18, 19-year-old saying, I really love playing on the grass. I want to be really good on it. And, he kind of likes the diving side of things and kind of enjoys it. Whereas some players, you kind of like, you get the feeling from them. They feel it's a really short part of the season. They're not very good on it. They slip all the time. They don't feel comfortable. They don't feel they've got long enough to get good on it. And they're kind of prioritizing other areas, I think. But that said, I've not seen the evolution in his game on grass, which has been quite disappointing.
Well, I think that's what he was alluding to, is because he hasn't really played on it. He hasn't given it the time it needs.
But he goes to Queens every year and plays loads. Like, he does really love going there. Like, not just for the tournament. I mean, he loves coming to London and kind of playing on it and trying to get better. Like, I know people who've seen him just at random. I swear in like lockdown he turned up for a bit. Just started playing on the ground.
Sounds legal.
Yeah, I think it was just after that kind of league.
Even like last Christmas, we had an incident with him where he was going to come and hit with a player I coach, and then cancelled on the morning, saying that he hit at Queens the day before, and he'd like to hit at Queens again.
Right.
So,
he loves Queens. He really loves Queens.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would too if I could just turn up at Queens and have a hit. Like, I think I'd probably quite enjoy that. Yes, Holger Rune is through. He's going to play an all-Scandinavian quarterfinal against Casper Ruud, which I think is just great for the sport. Like, it's a part of the world I often talk about and say, why aren't there more players in that part of the world? But, good that we've got some coming through now. It's got a rich history.
Yeah, and look, this is a glorious opportunity for all four guys who are left in the bottom half now. I mean, none of them have been to a Grand Slam final. Most of them haven't been to a Grand Slam semi-final. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Cilic obviously has.
Yeah, you just completely forgotten about the
completely forgotten Cilic's great career. But the other three guys, excuse me. It's a great opportunity, and one of the guys in there is Marin Cilic, the guy who's done it, who you wouldn't really fear, although he played really well today, to be fair. So yeah, great chance for these guys, Ruud and Rune particularly, who kind of love the clay. I'd probably back one of them over Rublev, to be honest, which seems kind of counterintuitive, even though it's probably Rublev's to lose from here.
It's interesting that two Scandinavians, isn't it? Like James said, that we've not really seen that for a while, have we?
No, it's just, I guess Söderling, really the last guy to really be.
Well, Sweden was the big one, wasn't it? Because if you list the top 20 players of all time, two of them are Swedish, in Borg and Edberg. But what happened in Sweden was that it used to be tennis used to be hugely government funded, and then in the late 90s. Basically, the government pulled everything, and everything then had to be self-funded by the clubs and the players. So, and Norway and Denmark, to be fair, do have a lot of futures tournaments. That Norway does. Denmark has a lot of ITF tournaments, and it's not surprising me that they're getting a bit of success, because they basically price every other country out of playing those tournaments, because they are the two most expensive countries that you could ever go to.
And if you're looking for a pretty good measurement of how good Rune is at the minute, there are two 19-year-olds in the top 30, Carlos Alcaraz and Rune. The next highest ranked player under the age of 20 is 196. So he's streets ahead.
LiveTennis.au is a great website, isn't it, George?
Love it.
This podcast is basically sponsored by LiveTennis.eu and TennisAbstract.com, both of which are, if you're a real tennis nerd, or even if you're just a numbers nerd, they are both fabulous websites to go and spend a bit of time diving into. Yeah, I guess what Holger Rune really needs is someone behind him. I think Michael Torpegaard is about 350 in the world, and he's the Danish number 2. And then I'm reliably informed the Danish number 3 is a guy called Johannes Ingildsen, who is world number 735. So there's not a huge amount of strength in depth there.
Is there like a Petros Rune who he can bring along to play doubles with him?
Now, Vicky was, our good friend Vicky, who's a Greek tennis journalist, was telling me how important it was that Petros played doubles the other day. I wasn't totally sold on it, to say the least. We should mention, as George has alluded to there, the result that's just landed. Marin Cilic is through to the quarterfinals. He's not just through, he's romped into the last 8. 6-2, 6-3, 6-2. He beat world number 2 and the number 2 seed, Daniil Medvedev, the man who just a few days ago we were saying, well, he's going to win the blooming old thing, isn't he? He had made such serene progress into the 4th round. He hadn't dropped a set. He hadn't even gone to a tiebreak. No one had taken more than 4 games off him in a set. We just assumed this was all going to be fine. And then Marin Cilic, George, turns up and it's 2014 all over again.
Yeah, I'm shocked, to be honest. I mean, I had my doubts over Medvedev coming into the tournament, and then I watched him play against Kecmanovic and kind of dismantle him. And I thought, oh, okay, Medvedev's fine here. He's going to probably reach the final because Tsitsipas looks pretty poor. Cilic, James, you backed me in fantasy very wisely, so a huge credit to you for that.
Thank you very much.
But Cilic, I was kind of eyeing him versus Kecmanovic. I thought, I just can't trust Cilic not to just lose to someone really random and rubbish. And there's no way he's going to beat Medvedev past the 4th round if he gets there. So what's the point? And he's blown him away today. There'll be a lot of focus on Medvedev's condition, how fit he was, but Cilic was absolutely rolling back the years. It properly reminded me of that match against Federer where his forehand was just on fire and he looked so dialed in. He just absolutely loved it. So it's really, really nice for him to see for him, because he's kind of one of these funny players, isn't he, Cilic? So he's had an amazing career. Like, he's had 3 Grand Slam finals, won the US Open, beating, what Roger Federer en route, absolutely destroying Roger Federer en route. And had some pretty good finals, the 5-setter with Federer. Obviously, the other one was blisters, etc. But he's hit really great heights and had big wins. And yet, we always, I don't know, he just doesn't feel like that much of a.
He's also won a Davis Cup, by the way, which, for Croatia's a small country and they've not always had lots of great players. But, that is a big achievement for a country like Croatia, which is probably only, I don't know, anyone want to guess the population of Croatia? I was going to say 8 million.
Say that.
Yeah. Oh, it's 3 million. 3.8 million. So, that's a really big deal to win that tournament. Do we give him... I mean, George, we had this argument before we came on air. Really good Cilic or really bad Medvedev, or somewhere in between?
I think it was really good Cilic. I think it was maybe not perfect Medvedev, but there were points at the end in that final set where Medvedev is sprinting back and forth on the baseline, getting there, turning to his box like, what the hell do I do? Saying to the fans, like, this guy's just hitting too big. But then, Medvedev is taped up and we all know he's probably not quite ready to go on and win a Grand Slam, having played 1 match before this. So probably somewhere in there too. But I'm giving the credit to Cilic. I thought he was brilliant and just a nice guy, Cilic. He was one of the first people I interviewed in tennis, and we had a nice walk around the French Open. Back rooms, and he was lovely. So we've always said hello since, and he's a nice guy. I like him.
Good. Well, nice guys are us. There's actually quite a lot of nice guys in the latter stages of the French Open, so I can get behind that. We should, because we haven't touched on it yet, move on to the women's draw. It was, to be honest, a bit of a flat day in the women's draw, or at least it was to begin with. Daria Kasatkina did what we expected her to do and battered Kamia Georgi. Veronika Kudermetova made it 2 Russians into the women's quarterfinals, and we were expecting to have 2 in the men's as well. But anyway, she came from a set down to Madison Keys to win as well. She is, incidentally, also went deep in the doubles, although she did lose today in the semi-finals to Zhu and Yang. Jess Pegula came from a set down. Jess Pegula had one of the worst starts I've ever seen. I think she had 11 unforced errors in the first 4 games. And then rallied to win 6-2, 6-3. So, 2 relatively exciting games there, although just lacking in a bit of quality and maybe a bit of star quality as well. But then we had a real thriller from Iga Swiatek on Chatrier. She came out, she broke the serve of Zhen Qinwang, the Chinese player who's only 19. She broke the serve twice in the first set. She then lost serve twice. She blew 3 set points. It went to a tiebreak. She actually blew 6 set points in all and was forced to a tiebreak. As I mentioned before, which she changed her shoes and then changed her racket 2 points in. But she did come, and then she did drop that first set. It's the first set she's dropped since the 23rd of April against Lyudmila Samsonova in Stuttgart. It looked like it might be the first match she was going to lose since losing to Yelena Ostapenko somewhere back in the mists of time, so long ago that no one is quite sure when it was. But then she rallied, and it was in no small part because Zheng appeared to suffer a thigh injury. She had a medical timeout. She was re-emerged heavily strapped and then won just 2 games for the rest of the match. She lost 6-7, 6-love, 6-2. George, I know you overheard a lot of the Eurosport commentators saying how illegal medical timeouts should be. Seems like it was pretty reasonable, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. And she kind of spoke afterwards as well that I think she had kind of period cramps, or kind of alluded to that as well, which, we've spoken about a little bit before. That's never ideal. And, obviously kind of a young player, I guess, we spoke about this a long time ago, didn't we, where we kind of talked about that some of the top women are like almost purposely trying to block their periods for these kind of big tournaments and time their cycles, etc. Maybe that's a little bit of inexperience, I suppose, or not wanting to do that, which still is a very hard thing to criticize. I'm not criticizing, you know what I mean.
I think it's also,
it's just like,
I'm no
scheduling,
expert.
I suppose.
I'm no expert on women's reproductive health, to say the least. But when you're 19, things aren't necessarily completely regular. They're not necessarily completely predictable. And I know, because I've had multiple friends who played tennis to a high level when they were kids, and they basically stopped playing because their coach said you pretty much need to go on the pill so we can regulate this. And she was like, well, I'm 15, I don't really want to go on the pill, and I don't want all of the side effects that can come with it. So, yeah, obviously massively unideal, and I felt really sorry for her when she said in press, because she also sort of didn't want to say it. She said, it wasn't something that happened today, it was before the match already, girl things. And I sort of felt like at that point, they should, I wasn't in the press conference, I watched it back later, read the room. If you're a journalist at that point, realise what's going on. You don't need to pry at that point, which I just, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think one of the quotes was, she says, today I wish I was a man. And I think that's probably just, we have no idea, don't we, on this sort of
well,
stuff.
no, exactly.
It's just absolutely awful. So, it's all very well me saying schedule it and whatever and look after it and plan better. But, actually thinking about putting something into your body to control it is absolutely ludicrous.
No, exactly. It's really...
we'd never even think about that sort of stuff, really, would we?
No, and it's one of those things that we're completely kind of inexpertly able to talk about from personal experience. But yeah, you can certainly express sympathy and say that these things do happen. And yeah, it's one of those things. I think Heather Watson talked about it quite a lot a couple of years ago in kind of the big taboo about periods. And actually, it came up recently in cricket Twitter when Lizzie Ammon, who's a writer for the Times, she said, one really big thing you could do to encourage more girls to play cricket or not discourage them is let them wear non-whites. Because if you're 14 years old and you're on your period and you've got to wear white trousers, you're just going to say you're sick that day, right? Like, you're just not going to play, and that means 1 week a month you're just not going to play. It's just, and then, God, think about Wimbledon. I remember talking to Anna Smith, who has been on this podcast, about Wimbledon and the idea of getting your period at Wimbledon and it just being an absolute nightmare. Not good.
But we shouldn't remember her for that, because she played bloody well, didn't she? I mean, she was absolutely fantastic today.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is the thing. She is, and I was sat next to Ben Rothenberg and Jose Morgado the other day, and Zheng came up in conversation, and I think it was before the Halep match, and they both went, yeah, actually, that's a blooming tricky little match. And as it was, Halep had a panic attack and, ended up losing, and that was kind of not necessarily to do with Zheng, but she got the job done. And, yeah, I mean, she's, I think, already a pretty big superstar in China, and if she had beaten Iga Świątek, that would have gone through the roof, but I'm sure that'll be well received. Nevertheless, I'm not quite sure how high she's going to go in the rankings, because I haven't got the right sheet in front of me. Any guesses, George?
I'm not sure what she was before, to be honest.
Great. I knew you'd be really well informed. Yeah. She's going to go up to 55 in the world, which is a pretty good jump from a previous career high of 70.
It's got to be said that, all things considered, it may not be a great thing that she's already a superstar in China.
Well, no, agreed. And she was asked a difficult question the other day about Peng Shuai, and in fairness, she just said, "Look, I don't have any information about that. I don't know anything about it." And I put on Twitter, I said, "It's important you ask that question. It's also important that she knows that question is coming." Fortunately, she's been living in Barcelona for quite a long time and training there. She came over to train pretty much exclusively on clay with Pere Riba, who I don't know if anyone knows, but he is based in Barcelona and is a former top 100 player, and he's about 30, and he's quite good looking. They are all the things I know about Pere Riba, unfortunately, but yeah, she spent the last 2 years there, and I think is probably one to watch. After the break, we'll have a look forward to tomorrow's action. We've got 2 women's quarterfinals, we've got 2 men's quarterfinals, and one of them we may have seen before. Before we crack on to look forward to tomorrow's action, or today's action, I suppose, if you're listening on Tuesday morning, there was a conversation during the Zheng match where I think it was commentator Chris Bradnam was saying how kind of angry he was with all these medical timeouts that people are just taking wantonly. Now, as it turns out in this case, he was completely wrong, because it was a legitimate medical timeout. But, I mean, Calvin, we were just discussing, or just beginning to discuss off air there, it is something that players are able to do kind of, without being genuinely injured, right? They know the right things to say.
Yeah, there's certain injuries, in inverted commas, that you can say that you've got, and there's no way of the physio saying to the umpire, no, he doesn't have that injury, or she doesn't have that injury. So, but
would it ever happen that a physio, has it, like, a physio's like, I'm not giving this player a medical timeout because they're clearly faking?
I don't think they'd ever just say that to the physio. I don't think they'd say that to the umpire. I think they'd probably say to the player first, privately, look, I can't give you a medical timeout for this one. You can have the minute and a half between change of ends, but we can't do the full 3 minutes or whatever that's required. But there's no question that they are kind of out of control. But let's say, for example, that, and I'm going to be generous here, let's say that 70% of the timeouts are not because of injuries. That means that 30% are. And what are we going to do about those? If you've got an injury mid-match, because it may be a case that you might not be able to compete anymore without that. I mean, what I would say, if you've got an injury that requires a lengthened timeout, in my experience, you probably are going to struggle to compete from there on in. So if you have the medical timeout and then you're tearing around the court 20 minutes later, you've probably faked something there.
Going back to the kind of point about the physio telling the way that the one issue that sticks in my mind is that example that sticks in my mind is when Benoit Paire was at Wimbledon and he was something like 5-1 down in the third set, and he tried to call for the trainer. The umpire told him, "No, that was because we cannot have that."
That was specifically because he got a no effort code violation, and I think it was Leylah. I can't remember. And as soon as he did that, Per was like, I have pain. Call the trainer, I have pain. He just sat down. And he was like, no, like, you can't do this. And he's like, what? You think I'm not trying? Like, I was missing these forehands in the first set as well, and you didn't give me a no-effort violation then. Yeah, I mean, Benoit Paire is always good value, isn't he? Anyway, really interesting to hear Calvin talk about that. Let us know what you think. What would you do about medical timeouts? You can drop us an email, lovetennispod@gmail.com. I haven't been reading them out during the French Open because we've been so absurdly busy. We'll have a big fan reunion podcast after the French Open, and we'll go through all of your lovely emails and reviews. Thank you very much for them as always. You can also tweet us at lovetennispod. Now, or you can leave us a review. I should mention that. I can't believe I forgot to mention leaving us reviews. 5-star reviews, please. Leave them. Help us find more people and, make more podcasts. There are lots of people ask us to go bi-weekly. The more 5-star podcast reviews we get, the more chance we've got of going bi-weekly. It's quite simple as that, My money don't jiggle, it folds, as they say. Let's move on to Tuesday's quarterfinals quickly as we can after that. I think we really have to start with Djokovic Nadal. We've managed to get nearly halfway through and more this podcast without mentioning the fact that we have the 59th instalment of what John McEnroe told me today he regarded as tennis's greatest rivalry, and he knows a bit about tennis rivalries. Djokovic versus Nadal. It's going to be at 7:45 p.m. Tuesday night UK time. That's 8:45 here in Rome. It's going to be under the floodlights. Novak Djokovic got his wish and will be playing Nadal at night. It's also Amazon getting their wish. It's going to be on Prime here in France, although they very generously agreed to unlock it so that anyone can watch it in France through the Amazon Prime app. It is, of course, on Eurosport or Discovery Plus over in the UK. First of all, George, how big a deal is it this is a night match, not a day match?
In terms of Nadal's chances, or just in terms of...
Well, in terms of the impact on the match.
I don't think it's as big as people like to make out. I think we've seen Nadal duff Djokovic up playing in what were much harder conditions to play in 2020. I think the much bigger impact is the fact that Nadal's played a 5-setter with Felix Auger-Aliassime. A much bigger impact is the fact he's barely played any tennis coming into this tournament, hasn't found top form. Much bigger fact is that Djokovic comes into this match absolutely shit hot and getting better every match. Like, I really can't look beyond Djokovic for this match, and I think the conditions are about the 5th thing I'd have on the list for things that are in Djokovic's favour right now.
I see that you've been drinking the same Kool-Aid as Rafael Nadal, who was at pains to point out after his match against Felix Auger-Aliassime quite how injured he is, quite how little tennis he's played, quite how much tennis that big nasty Novak Djokovic has played, and how he might even retire. This might be his last match at Roland Garros, and it would be very mean if that nasty Novak were to beat him.
After he's got his way with the schedulers as well. What's he like?
And he's also managed to get his way with schedulers. I mean, Calvin, really, from an access perspective, there's no justification for putting that match in the afternoon anyway, is there? Like, surely you want the biggest match in the evening, sorry.
No, I disagree, because the night matches at Roland Garros are just crap. It just looks rubbish. It's like, like New York, it looks fantastic. It's warm, it's still warm, it's humid. The crowd are buzzing for it. This just seems so manufactured desperation to have a night session. The stadium always looks half empty. It's cold. I mean, I was talking today with a lad who was there, with one of the players who was there last week, and he said it's cold at night there. Yeah. So it's just ludicrous, and it clearly is just a bit of a money-making scheme, but is what it is. But on that, actually, what Nadal said, I noticed yesterday, and I thought, has anybody ever said no as often as Rafa Nadal does?
Oh, every sentence, no?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Even
and
if and he says it when
very injured, no?
He says it when he means yes. That's the weird thing. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of Nespa, isn't it? I suppose it's probably something that in Spanish does exist. Would you like to know how many times he said no with a question mark at the end of it during his press conference yesterday?
How many questions did he answer?
There's 4 questions in English.
So he probably gave 4 sentences for each one, so about 16.
It was 8. Eight that the transcribers have included. And I like to think they've got rid of a couple out of just sort of good sense.
Just going back to the schedule quickly. I mean, I agree with Calvin. I don't like the night session matches at the French Open, but there is the inescapable fact here that they're selling these night matches as just one ticket. I mean, surely for one match, you've got to put Nadal Djokovic on if you're selling that as like the big, prime time session of the day. Otherwise, that's ludicrous. As much as I want rid of them from it, you'd be furious if you bought that ticket and they didn't put Nadal Djokovic on it in that slot, right?
Yeah, that is precisely the point, really. And I do think that in terms of... I know the tea time slot, Murray always at Wimbledon used to be on sort of third on centre because they knew they could get him on at about 5 o'clock and he'd probably play for 2 hours and hit that tea time slot very well. But I can also see that, if you put on something on telly at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, not many people are going to watch it, even though it might be on France TV, which is the state broadcaster and therefore on free to air. It makes perfect sense what they've done to kind of open it up to the rest of the country. It's also clever from Amazon because you have to download the app to watch it. You don't need Prime or an account, but you have to download the app. So all of a sudden, they've got another million people with the app on their phone or their smart TV or whatever. So it kind of works for everyone, I think, unless you're Rafa Nadal. Now, the reason Rafa Nadal, and correct me if I'm wrong here, doesn't like playing at night is it's more humid, it's colder, the ball doesn't bounce as high, his big topspin forehand just isn't as effective. Is that about right, Calvin?
Yeah, it is, but I mean, that's kind of a bit negligible. I think, he knows the circumstances that he wins in. Like, the guy has made a career out of tearing up people in the middle of the day at Roland Garros.
Yeah.
Why would you want to go and make it cold? And that sort of thing. But yeah, it lowers his likelihood of winning, doesn't it? And, I think he's probably not happy about that. But on top of that, look, guy's struggling a bit physically. You don't want to be playing in freezing cold if you're struggling a bit physically. That's another aspect to bring into it. And, 40 minutes into the match, he won't be cold. But, you go break down early or something like that.
So this is the most played sort of partnership, Djokovic and Nadal, in Grand Slam history. 17 times they've played at Grand Slams. Nadal leads that 10-7. Of course, many of those victories have come at Roland Garros, but Djokovic is also the only man ever to beat Nadal twice at Roland Garros. The only other person having beaten him at all being Robin Soderling. George, this matchup has evolved so much over its lifetime. We're now at a stage, funnily enough, where I think they're even over the last 8 meetings. I think they're 4-4 over the last 4 years, I should say. Is it as even as that? Is it a genuinely even matchup at the moment?
That's a good question. I thought Novak kind of had complete control of this rivalry until a few years ago. And, one of the most significant wins in kind of, I don't know what stage of Novak we call this, maybe 5th era Novak, perhaps, is that win at Wimbledon in that semi-finals, which, of course, was... you'll hear Nadal fans going on about, I presume, in the context of this French Open as well, where Novak got his way and they kept the roof on and he won that in a dramatic fifth set over 2 days. That was a match when Novak had been struggling for months and months and months and then came back, won Wimbledon, and was suddenly the dominant force in tennis again after his kind of odd period where he dropped from being the best to being one of the worst in the world for about 8 months.
What, when he had surgery?
Well, yeah, there was other stuff, wasn't there? But anyway, let's not go into that. But he's kind of. I still think he's got Nadal's number. I do. I still think he's the guy to beat on any surface, including clay now for Rafa. I think he just feels stronger to me in slams. He feels over best of 5 sets. I feel like he's going to get through him physically. That's what it felt like last year at the French Open. I know Nadal kind of had a little ankle or foot problem as well in that match. And I just cannot see Nadal off the back of a 5-setter coming through Djokovic in this form. I think he'll be... I'm not saying Novak's going to thrash him, but I think he'll... I'd be stunned if Novak didn't become the first man to beat him 3 times at Roland Garros, to be honest.
Calvin, similar confidence?
I think Djokovic is going to win, yeah. Nadal looked Yesterday had an air of one of the last great Nadal performances. Like maybe not performance. It had a bit of. It reminded me a bit of Muhammad Ali in the late times, like the last Joe Fraser fight, where it was a great fight, but it was a great fight because Ali wasn't what he was, and he got through it. But that fight did a lot of damage to Ali that it probably shouldn't have, and I think that did a lot of damage to Nadal as well. One of the stats I heard yesterday when it was going on, which I guess it's one of those that but you don't really register, that when Nadal has won 2 sets at Roland Garros, he's never lost. And that's like that. Almost makes you.
Does anyone know the 2 people who've played 5-setters, or now the 3 people who've played 5-setters against
John
Isner,
Djokovic,
and Felix Auger-Aliassime?
But so that's almost like, when does a best of 5 become a best of 3? Because if he wins 2, he's won.
Yeah.
The other thing that's vaguely interesting about Rafa in his career is that his first Australian Open win, 2009, he didn't win the French Open. That was Federer's only French Open win. And it feels to me like that inevitably is going to happen again. Obviously, he's not won it a couple of times since then when Wawrinka and Djokovic have won. But it's quite interesting because that was such a gargantuan effort at the start of the year that he was in such amazing form. You felt, wow, Rafa's back to his best. And it's potentially going to cost him this French Open, that kind of amazing form at the start of the year where he kind of knackered himself out, hasn't been able to get ready in time for this. And now it just feels to me like Djokovic is just going to destroy him. And if Djokovic doesn't destroy him, Alcaraz is probably going to win off the back of 2 5-setters.
Oh, exactly. I think there's an interesting point that Chris Evert made. She's working for Eurosport as a tennis expert. Chris Evert, who I spoke to actually before the tournament, and really enjoyed talking tennis with her, but also really enjoyed her saying, through my cancer treatment, I've got through it. I'm quite tired, but I've been watching a lot of tennis, and that's great. And she's working from home for Eurosport and really enjoying it. She said something today, or yesterday, I should say. She said he's sounding weary. There's so much more that comes with being a professional tennis player than playing a match, but he sounded tired. I don't know where he gets his passion and the fire in his belly, but I started burning out in my early 30s. When I woke up in the morning, I didn't have anything in me. It's worth pointing out, Rafa Nadal has been a professional tennis player for 18 years. And, not just a professional tennis player. He's been at the top of the game for that long. That must take its toll.
Absolutely. And, on the flip side, Novak's not exactly much younger than Rafa, but Novak's in the sort of mood where I think whenever I've heard him say, I like my chances against both those people, I don't remember him losing a match afterwards. When he's just in that mood where he sits there I like my chances against both of them. I was like, I physically cannot then remember him in the next round.
Who does he not like his chances against?
No, but he says it in a certain way. Sometimes he'll be a bit more guarded and kind of put a little bit more,
do the sort of classic athlete thing and say, he's a very good player and I'll have to play my best.
This was like arrogant Novak, I like my chances. And normally he backs that up by absolutely blasting someone. So we'll see.
Well-founded arrogance. It'll be a cracking match. I don't doubt it's going to be dramatic. I worry that Djokovic might blow him out. That's my one worry. Did you have something to say, Calvin?
No, I mean...
You had a tentative finger.
No,
I couldn't tell if you were bring me in.
No, I wasn't. No, but he could blow him out. I'd say this: if Nadal's getting blown out, he won't finish the match. We've been here before with Nadal, and he went through that spell, didn't he? Where I thought it's against Djokovic. He went through that spell where the only players he'd let beat him at slams were Federer and Djokovic, and if he was losing to anyone else, he'd just withdraw.
Are we all seeing Novak 3 sets? Novak 4 sets?
I think
Novak 5 sets?
I think Novak 4, but I'm closer to 3 than 4. I'm not I don't think Rafa's any closer than that. Bizarre. I mean, it sounds odd to say, but I really don't.
It's mental to write him off, isn't it? I mean, I do sometimes just jar back from are we really saying Nadal's not going to do it?
I mean, I think that says a lot about where we are in Rafa Nadal's career. That he is the most recent Grand Slam champion. He's playing at a tournament where he's been more successful at this single tournament than anyone in history has ever been. He's only ever lost 3 matches out of 113. And we're here saying he hasn't got a chance.
Straight sets.
Yeah, exactly. It feels completely wrong. We remain to be proven wrong. It does occasionally happen, in fairness, but we
Quite
shall
often,
see.
I think.
Yeah, well, quite. Let's move on to the other quarterfinal in the men's draw, the winner of which will play the winner of that match. Alexander Zverev against Carlos Alcaraz. Does anyone give Zverev anything more than a dry leaf in hell's chance?
Yeah, I think he'll make it a good match, Zverev. I think he's got a bit of a point to prove after Madrid. You know, he sort of lent into the excuse of playing late. Although, to be fair, I mean, he did kind of say, I probably still wouldn't have won today.
But I probably shouldn't have stayed up for 2 extra hours last night serving at 1 in the morning.
Yeah. I'm not saying he's going to win, but I think he'll give him a good match. I think it'll be potentially a 5, to be honest. I've just got a bit of a feeling that Zverev's really got a point to prove, and that means he'll probably lose Love 1 and Love. No, I've said that.
Alcaraz has got to get tight at some point. Like, surely.
He was tight against Ramos. He was seriously tight in that match.
True.
Like he was nervous. That probably is the good thing, that since then he's been brilliant. And we sort of talking about that with Tsitsipas earlier, that Tsitsipas's bad match you thought would kind of propel him into something a lot better, and Alcaraz's has. He was unplayable against Khachanov. And if Zverev lets him play like that, he's got no chance. But Zverev's got a massive serve. If he serves well, he's going to be a threat against anyone. He is good on clay. Calvin will say he's never beaten anyone in the top 10 or barely beats anyone in the top 10, so why would I possibly back him? But I do keep saying I think he gets a little bit closer, and I think he's got a massive point to prove. And
he's also
makes
the
him
underdog.
dangerous.
He's also the underdog, which I think is really helpful.
I think that helps. I do genuinely think that helps a lot for him, that he's kind of coming into this match. People won't give him a chance. He's still a very, very good player, Zverev. As much as it pains me to say, he is still quite good at tennis.
Well, I mean, yeah. He is obviously very good. I just think he's got a massive bottle problem. And maybe being an underdog will help massively. The crowd are going to be huge for Carlos Alcaraz.
Yeah.
Zverev will probably relish that a little bit as well. Albeit when he was in Madrid, he did not rise to task. Although I would probably give him a bit of credit there on the late night finish the night before as well. So, Calvin, what do you reckon?
When you say he's got a bottle problem, you're right. The thing is with bottle, in inverted commas, how we use it, it's basic, and choking is basically what you do if you don't think you're prepared enough. And if you know that there's weaknesses in your game, those type of players are almost always more culpable to choking. And Zverev has 2 big holes in his game. Well, he has 3 if you include his volleys, but he doesn't have to come to the net. But he will have to hit second serves, and he will have to hit forehands.
Do you think he's good enough moving forward to play Alcaraz as well? I do worry a little bit for him on that. I've never liked him on short balls, and Alcaraz has got this brilliant drop shot. That does worry me a little bit in the match.
I mean, yeah, he is, and Alcaraz, it's not a secret that Zverev's terrible in the net. Alcaraz is going to bring him forward. He is going to have Juan Carlos Ferrero coaching the heck out of him from his box. Did you notice the other day when Alcaraz nearly outed him? The encore interviewer said, "I can't believe you serve and volleyed like on this point 2 games in a row, on a crucial point." And he went, "Juan Carlos, he always tells me to be very aggressive." And very nearly was just going to say, "Well, Juan Carlos told me to, so I did." So he's going to have some support there from the kind-eyed Ferrero.
If Djokovic and Alcaraz both win, who is it more important for to kind of have a quick, non-draining match? Is it Alcaraz because he's kind of youthful and bounces back, or is it Novak because he kind of knows how to go through it at this sort of stage? What do we think?
I don't think it makes a difference. Like, Alcaraz has proven he can go day to day, massively physical matches. Like, he's been like that since he was 16. And similarly,
but over 5 sets. I mean, he's not done that though, has he? I mean, like, he ran out of gas at last year's US Open, you'd probably say.
I suppose so. But also, it's not going to be that physical a match against Zverev. Like, it probably won't be.
Well, I think it could be pretty long, hefty rallies. It depends on the conditions of it.
Yeah, it's not Djokovic and Nadal. It should be a bit warmer tomorrow. It's a mid-afternoon match. Like, it should be relatively quick and bouncy. I mean, I think they could rattle through it, especially the way they both play. I think it could be a pretty quick match. And so
Alcaraz beat him easy. Alcaraz he's duffing him.
I wish.
So no need to watch tomorrow. Alcaraz is going to thrash.
Have maybe have a round of golf about 3:00.
3-3 and 2. 3-3 and 2.
I think Zverev's more likely to get a set than Nadal. That's my hot take today.
Right. Okay.
I don't know about that.
Hot take alert.
The biggest woof we've ever got out of Calvin. Right, let's move on to the women's draw, shall we? I mean, it is a bit of a damning indictment of the women's draw that we're going to go from talking about Djokovic, Nadal, and Zverev, Alcaraz to Trevisan, Fernandez. I mean, I mean this is no slight to Martina Trevisan, but she doesn't have the star quality that any of those four players do.
I think, we've spoken about this before and like kind of the problems with the women's game. There's so much history in these kind of men's matches at the minute with like Novak and Rafa, and then you've got the Alcaraz and Zverev who's been playing a lot of those guys. It's really easy to kind of form that story.
Yeah.
That said, I'm going to give you a big pitch on both these the quarterfinals because I'm quite excited. It's quite a good lineup, I think. Really like Trevisan. I think she's a really good player. She's got really good left-handed forehand, great touch, really suited to the clay. My one worry with her is that she's got what I call too happy to be in the quarterfinals syndrome.
Oh no!
Which may haunt her. But we all love Fernandez. We think she's a really good player. She's kind of proving us wrong. But I think that's going to be tricky. I do. I think I'm leaning towards Trevisan in that match, actually, weirdly.
That is
I hope
weird.
I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I think it's better for the sport to have Fernandez versus Gauff as the
If
semi.
she were playing Amanda Anisimova, I would be a bit more pro Trevisan because she's playing Fernandez, who, to be honest, I think Fernandez is mentally really bloody robust. Like, she's come through two really kind of roller coaster three-setters against Bencic and Anisimova. I think she gets the crowd involved, which I really like, and I think the Chatrier crowd really like, and I think could get on top of Trevisan a bit. I just really like Leylah Fernandez. I love her game. She runs the ball. She's so quick. I can't tell you. I've watched her quite a lot live lately, and I cannot tell you how quick she is. Like, she just runs down so many balls, and she's not just quick. She plays really good defensive tennis. Like, she gets to the ball and she does something with it. She's not just running the ball down, popping it up for a smash, which, albeit, against Anisimova is pretty effective. But she just does a lot with the ball, which I think is really the problem.
I do generally agree that kind of the head status says Fernandez should win this, but I was so impressed with her against Sasnovich in the way she was kind of down in the second set, like 5-3, and just reeled off 5 games, and she was just untouchable. I mean, she's got that in her locker where she can just hit through people and kind of, her results here have been, there's been a lot of 6-love, 6-2s, kind of blowing people away. She's good. I like her.
She's not played a seeded player. She's in great form because she won in Rabat, so she's won 9 matches in a row. But I just have no faith that she's going to come up against like someone who I think is an elite hitter of a tennis ball in Leylah Fernandez and then blow her away. It doesn't happen for me. Calvin?
I think Fernandez will win. My doubt in my mind is that Fernandez has lost a lot of matches in the last 6 months, 8 months that you'd think, yeah, she's winning that. She's a Grand Slam finalist. And she just, she's not won them, but seems to be on one of those US Open tears. I mean, she's a superstar.
Yeah.
I really hope that she finds some consistency because she's somebody who, I mean, we saw it in New York, and I always found it weird, like, as we said at the US Open around that time, there was this idea that the story was Raducanu. And it was because she won it and she played fantastic in it, but the star of it was Fernandez.
Yeah.
Like, she won the big matches. Yeah. And not just the people she beat, the way she won them. It was like night matches. She gets pumped up, and she was the real star of it. And it was only because Raducanu won it that, and that's not meant to be a criticism of Raducanu, obviously, because she just wasn't in that position. It's not her fault that she cuffed everybody. But
yeah.
And in terms of ideal, while I say I feel I've got a feeling Trevisan might do it, in terms of the kind of ideal match we want, it is really Fernandez Gauff. But even Fernandez Stevens a good match in terms of like Canadian versus Grand Slam winning American. Stevens is dynamite when she is on it, when she's focused, when she gets in her groove. But this feels like, whispering it quietly, feels like this could be Gauff's tournament. I'm sensing shakes on Swiatek. I think she's nervy. I feel like Gauff is just rolling people. I think that's a massive match. If Gauff can beat Stevens tomorrow, I'm backing her to win the title. I'm going big. Going big. All the hot takes tonight.
Brilliant. George has had a beer. By the way, Martina Trevisan record against top 50 players, 4-14, and 2 of those 4 have come in the last week. So that's my main takeaway here, is that Leylah Fernandez is going to batter.
That she's on fire, right? That's my takeaway from that.
Yeah, good. Yeah,
she's feeling it in a Kanepi moment.
No, famously, Kanepi never wins more than 2 big matches in a week. Like, it's not possible. Let's move on to the All-American quarterfinal. Coco Gauff against Sloane Stevens. 2 women there who I think we both have star qualities. Coco Gauff, obviously, since her breakthrough against Venus Williams at Wimbledon, she's one of those players who we think that most people in Britain could probably name 15 active women's tennis players. Actually, no, I'm going to reduce that number. The word active screwed me. 15 women's tennis players all time, but active could make most people, like the median person, probably names 5 or 6, and I think one of them is Coco Gauff. So for that reason, I'm hoping Coco Gauff wins, because it'll make a better story in my newspaper.
Yeah, and it will bring a lot of attention on it. Gauff Fernandez and then Gauff or Fernandez versus Swiatek is perfect. I mean, which means it's almost certainly not going to happen. It's going to be Trevisan versus Kudermetova or something. But that this is building up to be the slam we have wanted for a while in the women's game in terms of those big kind of blockbuster semis and finals. Maybe not in the earlier rounds. I can see Calvin making a bit of a face at me.
we could have if it was Gauff, Fernandez, and who would Swiatek play?
Pegula? Oh no, she plays in the next round, doesn't she? Actually, Pegula.
You want to know who Swiatek's semi-final is? It's either Kudermetova or Kasatkina.
Probably Kasatkina of those.
It's Poland versus Russia, which is pretty spicy.
I'd like to see Gauff and Fernandez. The winner plays Swiatek.
Yeah,
I think Swiatek would beat either of them pretty easy. But
what's the key in Gauff Stevens in that matchup? Where does it go wrong for Gauff?
If Gauff plays well, she'll win. If Gauff plays 8 out of 10, she'll win the match.
They met incidentally at the US Open last year, and Stevens won in straight sets. I think she beat her 2 and 4, which does not bode particularly well. But I think Gauff, as she has said herself, has made a lot of improvements over the last 6 months, particularly on clay. She's always taken clay quite seriously. Like, she's played quite a lot of tournaments on it.
She likes clay. Yeah, won French Open Juniors. Maybe this is the year we have Gauff and Rune winning it. French Open Junior champs.
There is a pretty big correlation between French Open Junior champions and people doing well at the French Open. Like, obviously not winning it because only one person's allowed to win it, but there is a pretty strong correlation.
I think there's something like 20. I say this like I've just seen it. I've been writing a bit of a piece about junior Grand Slam winners and what they go on to do, but there's something like 20 French Open Junior champions in the French Open draw this year, which is quite a big number, I thought.
That is a big number. I mean, the GOAT also won French Open Juniors, by the way, and
the boy.
I mean, he did qualify, didn't he? He did go out first round.
One.
The GOAT, for people who haven't been listening long enough, is Tseng, the Taipei player. Taiwan. The ITF call it Chinese Taipei, and I hate that. It's Taiwan. He won Wimbledon boys. He beat Jack Draper in the final. George and I were there, and George decided that he was going to be the best player of all time.
Oh, I love how you're shoving that on me. He's born on the same day as Federer, which I think sparked the kind of initial thought. And he'd just done the French and Wimbledon double at juniors. But unfortunately, probably a little bit lightweight.
Jack Draper grew, and Tseng did not, unfortunately, which was the real clinch.
I have to say, I did say I said that drunkenly to someone from the LTA who I went out with some drinks that night afterwards, and I said, "Seng is the ghost, isn't it?" And they were like, "Draper's going to go way higher than him." I was like, "Probably right."
Even with their LTA bias, they turned out to be right. That will all be worth watching. It'll all be on tomorrow. So we start with Trevisan against Fernandez, then Gauff against Stevens, Zverev against Alcaraz, and then 7:45 UK time, Djokovic versus Nadal. It'll be too late for the boys, I suspect, when I get back from Djokovic and Nadal, so I might do a solo little podlet afterwards, and then maybe we'll have a proper deep delve into it a little bit later.
I'm probably going to officially rule myself out tomorrow, realistically.
It will be a very late one indeed. George, have you got any other business for us? This is because you're not you don't want to talk about fantasy tennis because you're not doing very well in it.
I'm doing okay. I had a bit of a turning point, so I'm now just committed in my own individual battles. So I've got a bottle of wine each with two tennis club members who I'm friends with, and one of them had Tsitsipas today, but has like a 3.5 lead on me. So I kind of need a win from Gauff, Kasatkina to go out, and then Novak to win the tournament. So that's why I'm being really confident for Novak at the minute. That's my real reason.
I mean, I'm fourth. Just so everyone
you're
knows.
Doing amazingly.
James Gray, tennis expert, is not a sort of dig.
You had to back that name up, didn't you? You had to. Like, I saw you put that down. I was like, James is going to come like bottom 20.
I mean, it was a sort of semi-ironic name because I'm not a tennis expert. I'm just a journalist who talks to people about tennis a lot. I don't think I can really. I mean, Marin Cilic has done me a massive favour. Not very many people have got him.
If he wins the title, you could win it, right? Surely. So you get an extra 0.5 from now every win, right?
You get a point for every. You get an extra point for every win from now on top of your normal.
Oh, that's
points.
big. That's big.
Yeah, each second week win is worth an added.
So Cilic is going to be getting you what? 2
So
points a win from him.
Cilic will be 2 points a win. Yeah. So I mean,
that's big at this stage.
I think I'm 5 points off the lead. Like Nole, in fairness to them, I don't know who they are. They didn't give us their.
Yeah, they've got like Rune and Rublev as well.
They've got Sloane, Stevens, Coco, Gauff. I don't think anyone has Gauff and Stevens. Oh no, the person in third also has Gauff and Stevens, so I can't even catch them. And I was covered off as well because the person in second had Jill Teichmann. So like, I just really had nowhere to go. Like,
well, you've done very well, and we're very proud of you, James.
Thanks guys.
Tonight.
Thanks. That's
Galvin, maybe not. He doesn't want to talk about it.
That's all we've got time for tonight. Thank you very much for listening. Please do come back tomorrow for a podlet. This has been the Love Tennis Podcast. Leave us a rating and review, and make sure you tell your friends as well.
Sports Social Podcast Network.